Hello, I'm Katie, and this is Stepmum Space, the judgment-free zone where we talk candidly about the fairy tales and scary tales of stepmom life. So whether you've been a stepmom for years, you're just starting out, or you want to understand the stepmom in your life a little bit better, this is the place for you. My guest today is Kristin. Kristin is a stepmother to 4 and a mother to 1 and a fellow coach working predominantly with stepmums in the US. Kristin and I covered all sorts in this chat, from resentment to managing clashes with the other household to building relationships with your stepkids, knowing when to step in and when to step back, and a lot more. I really hope you enjoy the conversation, and please remember, if you are struggling, you are not alone. There's plenty of resources, including tailored one-to-one support, available at stepmumspace.com or on the socials at stepmumspace. Here's Kristin. So, Kristin, I'm so happy to have you here today, all the way from the west coast of the US. How are you?
Yes, Katie, I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm doing really well. It is a very warm and humid day in San Diego, where we live.
I'm really excited to talk to you. And what's so brilliant is that through the podcast and everything else that we're doing, we're just connecting all these people across the world who are going through all the same emotions. And it's just brilliant to help people know that they are normal.
Yes, and not alone, right?
Exactly. So I always feel a special, if ever I meet anyone in any sort of walk of life and find out they're a stepmom, I'm like, we've got a connection.
I feel you on that. Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your family then?
Sure. So I have 4 stepkids, and we right now we see them every other week. So it's 50-50 custody is the agreement. And I have a husband. We've been married about 5 years, and we just recently, about 2 years ago, adopted a daughter. So we have a almost 2-year-old as well together.
And how old are your stepkids?
So the youngest is 10, and then 11, 13, and 15.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do my best bit of maths. So when you guys met, they must have been what, 3, 4, 6, and 8?
Yeah, so they were pretty little. Like, especially the younger ones were very little when we met.
I mean, oh my God, is the first thing that comes to mind. Like,
yeah, a lot of children, I know.
You must have really liked this guy when you met him.
Yeah, and it was, I sort of feel like you never really can say what it's going to be like until you're in the situation. And I have 3 younger sisters. So I grew up in a household of 4. So I wasn't really intimidated by the number of kids per se. So to me, that didn't feel like that big of a deal, like the fact that there were 4 kids, because of the family that I grew up in. But I feel like with so many, blended, and so many of the women I talk to, sometimes they're like, yeah, we have 6 kids between the 2 of us, or 7, it's just, I had one person who I worked with who had 11 children between her kids, like her biological children, and her spouse's biological kids. That to me, that I was like, wow, that's too much.
11's like a whole different mode of transport, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
It's really funny, actually. I was out yesterday with my husband and 2 stepdaughters and 2 of our kids, and we saw these pair of swans come out of the river, and they had all these little cygnets, like maybe 11 or 12 of them. And I said, I bet they're a step family of swans. There's just so many of them. Like, I do quite often think when I see big families, I'm like, I wonder, maybe I should go to strike up a conversation with her, check she's okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So how was it when you first met your husband and started this journey?
So my husband is in the US military. So he gets stationed in different parts of the country. So at the time when I met him, he actually was stationed on the opposite side of the US, opposite from his kids. So when I met him, he was just like, yeah, I have kids from a previous relationship. I have 4 of them. And my first reaction was probably like, well, that's a lot of children. But really, actually, we did have that chance, which is maybe unique. Maybe this isn't normally how it happens for most people, but we did have a chance to kind of get to know each other without really being too involved, at least on my end, in the kids' lives. Once we got engaged and then married, they started, when they would come out for their visits to him during their breaks and their summer vacations and stuff, it felt fun because it was like we're on holiday and, we can go explore all the museums and go to the zoo and go to the playground. We didn't have to sort of worry about the day to day of, did you do your math homework and what time is your, physical therapy appointment? And
Yeah.
are we going to drive, 4 kids to all their different activities and schools and collaborate between homes? So it felt easier, I would say, when we were further apart in terms of logistics. I know for my husband, of course, it wasn't.
And in that situation, so he was working in San Diego where you live.
No, so he was working in Washington, D.C. So he was away from the kids were in San Diego. The kids have always been in San Diego for a long time. He was in Washington, D.C., and that's where I was working and living at the time.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the kids would come out to him.
Like Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring break, summertime.
I guess in the early days, kind of, it was quite an infrequent contact. How was your relationship with them in the beginning?
I guess it wasn't something that I honestly thought too much about, in the sense that I looked at it as we're just getting to know each other. Like, I think I let my husband at the time, right? Because I think we were married when they started visiting our shared home. I let him do most of the parenting. So I was sort of like easing into it, letting the relationship unfold however it needed to unfold at the time. And I'm sure there were hard moments, but I feel like the more challenging thing was us agreeing on how we were going to work as a team when the kids were with us. That's where I remember the most disagreements that were happening. And I think that's when I started to get more into exploring coaching as a resource for myself first and foremost, to kind of help with the dynamic in our marriage primarily.
And what sort of things were going on at that time between you and your husband?
I think that I was feeling very unappreciated, and I really wanted him to like verbalize that I was doing a good job, that he was being appreciative of how much I was helping out, how much I was supporting him as a parent. So we argued about that a lot until we finally realized like we just both have different ways of expressing appreciation and both of them are okay. That's what kind of resolved things for us, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's so interesting to learn about how the other person handles stuff.
I think that a lot of people really struggle with being so different from their partners, and also accepting the idea that both of us are doing our best even though we're different, and it's okay for us to have different ways of being, and it doesn't make one person wrong and the other person right, or vice versa. But that's not an easy understanding to come to, I think, for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think when, particularly in parenting, and often, I'm sure we both experienced conversations with women who parent differently to their partners. And it is very much like you can have different views on parenting, but it doesn't mean you think the other person's a bad parent. That's just not how you would do it. And I know that comes up for me a lot. When we first met, we didn't parent in the same way, and it does create a few challenges. So I'm not surprised that you and your husband had a few arguments about that.
Yeah, and wasn't even about the parenting. It was more like how he was relating to me in the relationship. Like if I was stepping in as a parent figure, right, in this relationship with his kids, it's like I wanted acknowledgement for that. I wanted recognition for that,
Yeah.
And I wanted him to verbalize it to me. But I think again, the difference between us maybe and other folks who've experienced this is that I didn't come in with any kids. And I didn't have a lot of like strong ideas about how to raise a child, right? So I was just more like, okay, let's watch how he does it and
Yeah.
see if I agree. And usually, I was pretty on board because at the time I was like, well, these are his kids first and foremost, and unless I see like something egregious, I'm not gonna step in. But usually I was pretty on board with whatever he was doing. But even like with our own daughter, I would say that's changed, right? We have more, not a ton, but more like disagreements on how we think we should raise her because we're more, I'm more invested, right? She's actually my daughter. I'm not legally responsible, right, for my stepkids. So for me, the dynamics are a little bit different in our home specifically.
Yeah. Just to circle back to your stepmom journey. So you've met this guy in
Yes.
Washington. His kids live in
Yes.
San Diego. I mean, that's a long way. So us UK folk aren't
Yes.
generally that good at US geography, but it's far.
Yeah. It's on the opposite sides of the country.
And not the size of the UK country, right? So
Right. It's like, yeah, I'm sure it's like from the UK to like, I don't know, Tajikistan or
yeah,
something.
it's a whole different
It's far
time
away.
zone.
Yes.
And so they're over there. You like this guy. It's serious enough that you're going to meet his kids, but at some point you've relocated. So take us through that. What happened there?
Well, so again, with his role in the military, right, they get to decide where he's going to be, essentially. And I think that they prioritized getting him back with his kids, and there happened to be an opening at the base in San Diego. So that's where they sent him. So I kind of knew going into the relationship that I would be moving around, which I was fine with as long as I could continue doing what I wanted to do in terms of a career.
The practicalities of moving to San Diego sounded pretty okay. I guess making that move meant a change in the schedule with the kids.
Exactly. It made a huge change in custody, right? And that's where I think more of the challenges started to arise, and not necessarily between like my husband and I, but really between the across the two households. And I do want to be clear, like I do feel like we are I'm thinking about my clients, like I feel like our relationship that we have with the other home, with the other set of parents is like respectful and amicable, but we still disagree a ton on how to raise the kids. And I honestly think like today, looking at things today, that's where the most friction is. It's not even regarding the kiddos themselves, but it's really between households, right? And how to be respectful when we are so different in terms of our philosophies and ideas about how to raise the kiddos.
Tell me a bit more about that.
I think that when we look across the homes, like my husband and I are much more laid back, we're much more easygoing. We like to allow the kids to have more freedom and therefore like more responsibilities, right? So we're kind of, I guess, more easygoing in that sense. And I think the other household just wants to be more involved. I genuinely don't think either of us are wrong, but I think that there's a lot of just it causes friction when we're so different. And I believe like when it comes to the kiddos, like if they come to me and they say, it's really hard to have different rules or different expectations across homes, I'm like, yeah, it is. Like it is hard.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're going to be okay, even if it is challenging to have different rules across different homes. We're both doing a good job. Both homes are doing a great job. We don't need to agree.
And do you know what? It's really great that they feel that they can tell you that they find that hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's cool, right? Because that's part of the space that we try to create here at home is like all of your emotions are welcome. No matter what it is. And I just see my job as to validate them.
Yeah. What else is interesting is that you can look at the other house and say they're so different, but they're doing a really good job. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people struggle with, is when the other house does things so differently. And
yeah,
the stepmom doesn't agree with what's going on in the other house, doesn't think it's in the best interest of the child.
And I think there are like genuine examples where maybe there's nothing you can do legally about what's happening at the other home, but it's probably not the best, right? And I do think that's really hard. So that's
Yeah.
why I feel like our situation is hard. It's hard to have so much friction in terms of like how we parent the kids across our two homes, but I still know that nobody's like harming the kids. But I think when there's, maybe you suspect emotional harm, right? Which is, especially in the US, that tends to be really hard to address in the court system. That is true, that it's not okay. And as the stepmom, especially, it sucks to not be able to do very much.
Yeah. And I think, I've learned a lot through this journey and talking to lots of different women on the podcast, because the bar for neglect has to be so horrific for kind of the police or the social services to get involved. So, I was chatting to a woman the other week who was in a situation where, the stepkids at mum's house, that they're not cared for, they're not looked after in a way that you or I would call properly. But she said to me, I'm a police officer. I know the police won't get involved because actually the kids get fed and they're not being beaten, and it's like, so I think in those situations, it's so difficult. So can you share a little bit about the sort of conflict you experience?
So I think like one of our biggest things is like how many activities the children are involved in at any given time. My husband and I, we both are pretty busy with our respective jobs. And especially with him in the military, like he has zero flexibility. If they tell him he has to go into work, he has to go into work. He's not treated as a normal like civilian would be at a regular employer. So he has very little flexibility when he's scheduled. And so what that means is that we just have less time to drive the children everywhere. And when they're here with us on our weeks, that's 5 kids. We're covering the needs of 5 different children. And so it's really a question of, if it were up to us, we would probably have all the kiddos in less sports activities, not saying they don't do anything at all, but less activities, maybe more coordinated activities, maybe going to the same gym facility or whatever, all at the same time, if we could work that out. But instead it's like this kid's here and this kid's here and this kid's here and this kid's over here. So I think that just makes it complicated. And that's like a constant source of, I would say, tension, is how many and which activities the kiddos are going to be in. And then the other thing is how involved we are in making sure, especially the older kiddos, get their homework done, right? Again, like we're much more hands off when it comes to that. Not to say that we won't offer any help or support. I'm not saying that at all, but we're much more hands off. And I think the other home tends to be much more hands on. And so there's some tension and friction around that as well. So these aren't like, nobody's going to get seriously injured or severely psychologically damaged because of these conflicts, but it's just annoying. It's annoying to have different ideas and to always have an argument about it. And not to say that there's always an argument, but it does come up from time to time. And like in my role, I mainly try to stay out of it. Like I really do let my husband, speak with his ex about what the conflict is, how they're going to resolve it. And normally it's not that there's no resolution. It's just like they hear each other out and we just keep doing what we think is best. And they just keep doing what they think is best.
My older son's 13. I'm definitely on the hands-off approach on homework. And it's not that I don't care. It's that I think you're 13. You need to, they all have it on an app now. They can see what homework they, need doing. But then I'm quite lucky because he's quite diligent. So he doesn't need me to micromanage him. In terms of kind of you and the birth mom, is there a relationship there at all?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like we have met in person, just her and I, a few times to get to know each other, to, talk. I don't even remember because this was a while ago when we like first moved here. We met a handful of times. And I think that if we really had something important to say to the other person, we would. We've talked on the phone. We were like cordial to each other. We're respectful. I'm hands off with homework. I'm also hands off with her. And I really don't try to meddle with what she wants to do as a parent. Like I do really try my best to be respectful, even if I don't always agree. And it's like I don't need to tell her all the time that I don't agree. Like I just don't see a point in doing that. But I think if there was anything really huge that she had a problem with, she would reach out to me. I would definitely be receptive to that.
What's your relationship like with each of your stepkids now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're pretty close. It's really nice, like, they all have different likes and personalities. It's really nice to like one of my youngest stepdaughters, she's very skilled at watching and like helping out with our daughter. So that's really nice to have all that extra help. So we have kind of like a special bond around my daughter, right? Her sibling. And, some of the other kiddos, I'm trying to think. One of them has like a really goofy sense of humor. So like we really connect on that. The other one is, a little quieter. But I feel like I'm the person he'll come to when he's like feeling really down. So that's really nice. And then the oldest, I mean, he's 15, right? So he's really like getting up there. He's really becoming much more mature. And we have a really good bond, I would say. Like we're very respectful. It's not to say we don't get in fights or arguments, but like if we make a mistake, like we'll both apologize, because he's a teenager and like all teenagers, right? They they love their independence. They think that they're right all the time. And
Absolutely.
right. But we respect each other. And I think that's been the thing for me. And I know this isn't always true for like all stepmoms. So when people are listening to this, I really want them to know that if my situation is different from theirs, there's nothing wrong with them. But I really do think with me and these kiddos, like they have, for the most part, always been pretty respectful towards me. And also, I feel like welcoming, right? Maybe not so explicit as like, we're so excited and thrilled that you're marrying our father, right? But they've never actively showed, hostility or tried to exclude me or been aggressive in terms of my role and my relationship with their dad, which again, I think means I'm lucky. It's challenging, right? Because it takes work to build those relationships. Even in relatively good and like relatively peaceful conditions, it's hard, right? So I really feel for especially the people who don't have the benefit of those things because it makes it that much harder to build a successful relationship with those kiddos.
Yeah, being a stepmom, it's a bit like you're in a sailboat and like
Mm-hmm.
even when the sea's really, really calm and the sun's shining and you've got all the equipment you need on the boat, it's still quite a lot of work to sail a sailboat. And then
Yeah.
if you add in like a rough tide of an ex or
Yep.
a storm of a hormonal stepchild or whatever it might
Yes.
be, like you add in all those elements and then the ship becomes harder to sail, right? So
Yes.
it's always hard.
Yeah. 100%, right? Like it is always challenging. And you're right, like different external conditions make it more challenging. And I feel like I can't stress that enough that I think especially, and I don't know if you notice this too where you are, but I feel like in the US we very much tend to blame ourselves for a lot of the things that aren't going well in our families.
Yep, 100%.
But it's not just us, like especially in our role as stepmoms, like there's so many complicated dynamics, that really can make things more challenging or less challenging.
Yeah, I was chatting to a lady the other day about this because I was saying it's almost like another one of those circles. So when you become a mother, there are lots and lots of resources available to you and lots of people talking quite honestly about the difficult parts. But when you
Yes.
become a stepmother, nobody really talks about the difficult parts or the complicated emotions. So when you feel them, you're like, oh shit, it's me.
You're like, I'm evil, right?
Yeah.
It's like you become evil,
Yeah.
right? But it's not true. You're just a human being having like some emotions because things are so hard
Hmm.
because no one could have ever prepared you for this family that you're about to or that you are right in the middle of
Yeah.
or that you're about to join or whatever.
Do you have in the US, do people kind of say, oh, you knew what you were getting into? Because,
Oh yeah, they
yeah.
do, and they still even, so I'm a coach and I'm on social media, and people still make comments to me publicly, right? Not They're not privately messaging me about this. They're publicly saying, well, like, don't be a stepmom, or yeah, you knew what you were getting into.
I mean, I can't, obviously, anybody listening won't be able to see me kind of furiously shaking my head and
Right.
rolling my eyes. But like, oh my God, I was, I don't know, I wasn't hoping it was just confined to the UK, but it's such a crazy thing to say. Someone has a hard day at work. You don't kind of say, oh, you knew what you were getting into when you took a job.
Yeah, it's very like there's like some fairy tales and stuff that are like centuries old that, vilify the stepmom, right? So I really do think that this is like, and then, today, even in our media, even on TV, nowadays, most days, stepmoms are cast, at least in like the US, as like wicked. So it's really like ingrained in our society, and it makes us feel ashamed
Mm,
for
mm.
like resenting our stepkids, or resenting our decision to marry somebody with kids, or dreading when they come to our home, right? Their home, their second home, or whatever, however we refer to that, right? It makes us feel ashamed. And
Mhm.
that makes us push those emotions down, and then we feel even more alone because we don't know that it's not just us, and that there's nothing wrong with us for feeling that way.
Yeah. And the shame that people carry around can eat you up.
It does, because it literally makes you hide from yourself, from your family, and it depletes you energetically. You're more tired. You don't sleep as well. You have less
Mm.
ability to focus and concentrate, right? Like there's all these ripple effects of being in that space.
Yeah. And again, I don't know what it's like in the US, maybe the same, but the research in the UK kind of shows that stepmoms suffer twice the mental health conditions of biological or adoptive
Yep,
mothers.
same. It's the exact same. It's hard.
It
Like it's
is.
we're not making this up.
That's it. I'm like, fact, it's harder.
Yes.
Science tells you it's harder.
Yeah.
And the way that the media plays out stepmoms is just, oh God, it makes me.
It makes our job harder, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even the other
Because
day, so
yeah.
my youngest child came home with a book from school, Cinderella. It was a modern book. I could tell from the sort of the cover and the language and the way the illustrations were done. And I kind of opened it and I thought, oh, this is going to be like they might talk about a wicked aunt or something. I don't know. I just was hopeful. And I opened it and I read it and it was still the same. The wicked stepmother did this, this, that, and the other. I was like, right, email the school. Please, could you have some more inclusive family literature that you're sending home, you know?
Yes. Yeah, like one that paints the stepmom as like most of us, right? Like the majority of us who are kind, right, nurturing, who really do care about our stepkids, right? But it's like we're put under this microscope or like this magnifying glass, and everything we do, it feels like sometimes can be scrutinized and is criticized and is not in the best interest of the kids. Like it's a really, in my mind, I'm like, it's just such a gross double standard,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. I
know?
mean, I couldn't agree more. It's very much, put the kids first, put the kids first. And then with your biological children or your adoptive children, it's like, you need a break, you need to relax, put yourself first.
Like what? Why are stepmoms supposed to be martyrs? That's because that's what the expectations are. But
Yeah.
but why?
Yeah.
In what world does that make sense?
None. And then you think about actually, you want to be a good role model for your stepkids. You need to have some of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot. So it's no surprise that women find it harder. And I'm just really comforted and saddened to know that it's
Yes.
global, the feeling.
Yeah, it is. And I was thinking, even as we're talking, I spent the first 3 to 4 years of my marriage wondering if I was bad, if I was wrong as a parent, which now I feel like, thanks to a lot of coaching and therapy, I feel like I'm a completely different person. But even me, right? In my head, I'm like, my husband has an amicable relationship with his ex. Like the kids, they're not like actively trying to ruin my life or our marriage. You know, I have all of these quote unquote good conditions. And I still heard, that internalized voice from society shaming me for every mistake I made as a parent or telling me, you don't need a break because you're a stepmom. Like, so even me, I suffered from that. So I just feel like it's so important to recognize that it may not matter. Lucky you are, so to speak, in terms of the conditions of your blended family or your step family. It can happen to anybody. Any one of us can have these doubts, and it's not our fault. It's programs that we have internalized from society, from the media.
I think that whole kind of mentality of not giving ourselves a break, feeling like we have to carry on going, is fighting against the whole wicked stepmother, I'm evil thing. You kind of think, no, I must do better, and don't listen to your body. You don't, I look back, I got myself in such a state and I didn't ever rest, and I would always be onto something, and quite frankly, taking on things that weren't my responsibility to take on.
Yep. Yeah. I'm thinking of a lot of the women I've worked with who come to me feeling like so resentful. And really what we do when they feel that way is like we recalibrate. What are your needs? What do you need right now? And I think even me, as I take away all these layers of shame from my own self, I become clearer in what it is I need. A lot more breaks. And I have worked very hard to not beat myself up for that. It's not easy when you don't have somebody or a group of people validating you, that you need that too. Just because you're a stepmom doesn't make you like suddenly superhuman.
So I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about your daughter and how the relationship's been since she came into your life with her siblings.
Yes. So we made the decision to adopt. And then normally, like with the agency that we worked with, they said it's going to be about 2 years, maybe a year, right? Average wait time might be a year. We actually got picked pretty early on, which was a bit of a shock. And the birth mom who did pick me and my husband at the time was like, I don't know, she must have been 33 weeks pregnant. So we had like, it was a very quick turnaround time.
Wow.
So we had, I think, one conversation with the kids where we were like, we are going to adopt, like this is the general timeline. And, they told us all of their feelings. They were mainly worried about how much attention they would get from us. And then when we told them that this little baby was going to come into our lives, again, I think they were just scared of being left alone or not having as much attention. And we were just kind of like, yeah, like, I mean, you may get less attention because babies are really needy, but we still love you.
We laugh about it, and yes, it is really, really important to bear in mind the emotions of stepkids when other children come into the family.
Yeah.
But in every family across the globe, when an extra child comes into the family, the existing children get less attention. Like,
it just happens. Right. And it's okay. We told them like, it's okay that you feel this way. And then once they were introduced to her, as soon as we brought her home from the hospital, I think they came and visited her maybe the next night or something like that. So I think that's when they realized, because they're a bit older than her, the youngest at the time was 8. I think just like holding something so small and fragile, that really felt, for them, it was very touching. And they do enjoy her. She's still at the age where she's not yet throwing huge tantrums and
it'll come.
anything like that. Right. So she's still like very like sweet and cute and can't really talk that well. So they feel protective of her. They do enjoy like playing with her. If I'm making dinner and my husband's not here, they'll help me, like they'll play with her in the next room or something like that. So they're very helpful. And we haven't checked in about it in a while, but they haven't said anything about like, we don't want her here or whatever. if anything, they seem excited to see her. They're always like commenting on how big she is. So that's actually gone again really well. And again, I don't think this is because my husband and I are like the most amazing parents on the planet. I think it's just because it worked out that way for us. But I know it doesn't always work out for everybody that way.
It doesn't always work out, but more often than not, I do hear that the addition of a sibling is a positive thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have your feelings towards your stepchildren changed at all since you became a mother yourself?
It's a good question. I think that what it has helped me with actually is being more empathetic towards their mom. If my husband and I were separated and I had to see, my daughter every other week and I couldn't have as much, say in certain things as I wanted, like, I would struggle with that, I would definitely struggle with that because I love to be in charge and I love to be in control. So I think that's what it's helped me do. And I think it has helped me, I guess it's sort of reinforced the idea in my head that it's important that I keep a relationship with these children for the sake of my daughter, right? For their sibling, so that she can have a relationship with them, whatever that might look like. Maybe that's, I don't know. I feel, it's hard to say if this is because of her or just because of the years, but I feel like I'm, again, much more like as the years go by, I'm more patient. I'm more like selective in what, battles I pick, so to speak, with my stepkids. And unless something's like really unsafe, or they're being unkind to somebody, I generally let them be themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I've definitely learned to do more of. And sometimes I had to sit on a few things that I would have said if it was my son. And it's hard because I still have this like, oh no, the right thing to do as a grown up in the life is to say this. But then I'm like, but then I'm going to get this battle. And, you kind of constantly weighing up what's the right thing to do versus what's the least conflict thing to do. And like, almost having like a half-hour conversation in your head in the space of 20 seconds.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. During the years where I was worried about whether or not I was being a good parent, I definitely felt that a lot more. I feel like what's really helped me on a personal level with them is just looking at them from like a bird's eye perspective of, you're going to be okay, and I'm going to prioritize our relationship over like making you eat your vegetables right now. And even though it, hurts my soul that some of my stepkids don't eat very healthy, that's like a huge thing for me that's super important. It was just causing, for example, like too many battles, too many power struggles, too many fights. And I don't know what to tell you. I mean, when I was a kid and then I thought about myself when I was a teenager, I used to have a bowl of cereal every night for dinner. I would like go to my sports practice, come home. My mom would be like, I made this homemade spaghetti and meatballs. And I'd be like, I'm going to have cereal and I'm okay. I think with them, I'm just trusting more that who I see and because they have nurturing parents, that like, they're going to be okay. And some of the small stuff, even if it bothers me in the moment, like you were saying, oftentimes I will just not address it.
I think I was always really worried about my son, who's a similar age to my stepdaughters, being parented quite differently. Like me and his dad, my first husband, are pretty similar in approach. There are obviously things that are different, but generally on the big stuff, we've got a similar view. And it just got to the point actually where I would just say to him, well, do you know what? The girls' mum and dad make the rules for them and your mum and dad make the rules for you, and they won't always be the same.
Yeah.
Which, for him was tough because he was eating those vegetables.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we even do that, like even amongst my stepkids, we have different rules for who eats what at dinner. Because if I'm really honest, I'm like, well, it's because one of them pushed back so much that we just couldn't take it anymore. So even amongst my stepkids, like we do different stuff. And the baby, she's not really a baby anymore, but I call her a baby. She eats different stuff.
Yeah.
So we just tell them, like you have, it's not always going to be fair and equal, but it's okay.
One of the things that I'm really interested in hearing about is the work that you do with stepmums and your top bits of advice from all the work that you've done over the years that you might be able to share with our listeners.
That's a great question. So I am a certified life coach. So I work primarily with women with stepmoms on a one-on-one basis. And I would say most people come to me because there's two reasons. One, they want to feel better, whether that is, I want to stop, hating my stepkid, or stop feeling resentful, or stop being so anxious on transition days. And two, they want to stop arguing with their partners so much about, maybe parenting or whatever, right? That's a big one for many of us, right?
They're definitely the two things that I see the most of as well.
So I would say, I think the biggest thing, sort of like the gateway to wanting to feel better, starts with accepting your emotions as human and as normal. And that's easier said than done, of course. So I'm not saying, like, if you hear me say this, that if you can't accept how you feel, that you should be able to. That's not true. But that's one thing that can be really helpful. And if you can find that in your heart, that's beautiful. And if you need help, there's lots of people, coaches, therapists, whatever, that can help you find acceptance for just the truth of how you're feeling. And once you accept yourself and where you're at, that really creates a sense of being settled and grounded in your body. And then once you get there, once you find that acceptance and you're feeling calmer on the inside, that creates many different ripple effects in your life. It's easier to be patient with your spouse or partner. It's easier to be patient with your stepkids. It's even easier to be patient with yourself. So all of this, that acceptance creates, and it can lead to much more cooperative relationships. Okay. So I would say acceptance of how you feel, the truth, nothing but the truth, right? Of how you feel is number one. And then number two, it's really learning how to communicate in, I like to say, like, non-violent. I know non-violent communication is a big thing, but it's really just learning how to express yourself in a way that doesn't place blame on other people and assumes good intentions. So if we can, through our language, show our partners that, for example, that we think they do have good intentions, through our language, that we're taking responsibility for our feelings without blaming them, and again, that's not saying, like, we're not gaslighting ourselves, we're not becoming a doormat, we're not sweeping our needs under the rug. But when we use that language, that tends to open up our partners and make them less defensive, so that even if we continue to disagree, we can walk away from the conversation understanding each other.
And as soon as you've got a partner on the defensive, you're not going to have a good conversation.
Yeah, because you can't, it's really hard. It's like once you're in that space, a part of the more rational, logical part of your brain, like and I'm not trying to be demeaning, but it really is like the more empathetic, rational, logical, clear part of your brain shuts off. And the more primitive, toddler-like part of your brain is turned on. And so you're absolutely right. If both of you are feeling defensive in a conversation like that, it's not going to end well. Okay. No, I say that from experience and, from working with all my clients, like, it just doesn't end well, but we all get there. Right. So it's learning to recognize that and then being able to take that time out, right, to pause the conversation when we get too worked up on the inside.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that changes things for a lot of my clients is when we do talk about that assuming good intention, or they'll come in and say, and the ex has done this, and the ex has done this, and the ex has done this, and she's done it because this. And we all do it in everyday life. We all jump to assumptions, but actually what is interesting is if you look at the ex as if she was your best friend. So I was working with a client the other week and she was saying, oh, the ex has booked her holiday just when she knows that it's my sister's wedding, just so my stepkids don't come. And we kind of started talking about if it was her best friend, why would she think her best friend had booked the holiday? Oh, well, her best friend's busy. Her best friend's got a lot going on in her life. And we do tend to give a lot more credit to people we like we judge people we like on their intentions, not their actions.
Exactly. And I think when we are faced with, maybe a spouse, for example, who's overly permissive and we want more structure in our homes, it's very easy to assume bad intentions of our spouses, So there's nothing, so it's not to say we're broken or that means that we don't love our spouses. It just means that we've gotten a habit that we can change. We can start to see the good in our spouses by recognizing that they're probably doing their best and there's probably some other reason. One of the questions that I often ask my clients is like, if my spouse or partner isn't trying to be a jerk, what else might be going on here? Or if this wasn't about me, what else might be going on here?
And I can say as somebody who is birth mum to my ex's son, right. we'd had a really difficult period of communication and we ended up meeting for a coffee just to kind of have a conversation about it. And he told me all the things that him and his partner assumed I'd been doing and why I'd been doing them, and they were completely wrong. And that's not to be disrespectful to them. They had made an assumption with the information they had, but their assumption was wrong, and their assumption had made them think things that aren't true and probably caused them quite a lot of stress.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool that you have that, such a concrete example of that in your own life.
Kind of cool, but also quite scary because I thought he would have known me better.
Right. You're like, who? What? I can see that too. But yeah, I don't have that. I don't have that other side. I don't have an ex on the other side.
I can reflect on mistakes, or I can reflect on things I would do differently as a stepmom really easily. Or I wouldn't be doing the work that I do. You wouldn't be doing the work that you do.
Exactly.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
Would not be having this conversation.
Look, Kristin, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Just thank you so much for your time and for the advice today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Katie.
Thanks again to Kristin. I loved chatting with her. It's so brilliant to be able to connect women all across the globe who are facing the same challenges. And I know there are listeners in every single corner of this crazy earth. So a special hello to each and every one of you. Now, this is the last episode in this series, but do hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified as soon as the new season drops. Thank you so much for all your gorgeous messages and for your continued support and for trusting me with your stories and allowing Stepmum Space to be part of your journey. I say this every time, but it really, really does mean the world. If you need further support, then do reach out to me at stepmumspace.com or drop me a DM on Instagram at stepmumspace. If you have a story you'd like to share, please do get in touch via the website stepmumspace.com or on the socials at stepmumspace. Lots of love.